Alright, so this is to talk to you about your friend and mine, the e-reader. We've got 4 basic different models we're going to cover today in order to try and encapsulate all the differences, or as many as we can. Before we get started on the different models, there are a couple things to keep in mind. Some basic differences. E-ink versus touchscreen. E-ink is like the Kindle, the Sony you're going to see today. There's an e-ink Nook. The biggest difference, e-ink is designed to mimic paper as closely as possible. You'll notice that difference the most if you use it outside in bright sunlight. If you've ever tried to use your laptop outside when it's bright, can't really see what's going on. E-ink is designed to solve that kind of problem. It's supposed to be easier on the eyes too, mostly like a regular book. Touchscreen, you have the option of color. The interface is a little more intuitive and that kind of thing because you don't have to navigate from these outside buttons and menus. Battery life is another concern you'll see on a lot of blogs and that kind of thing. We're not going to waste a lot of time talking about that because different options on different e-readers affect the battery life of each e-reader, but they're all pretty long and they're all pretty easy to recharge. Syncing versus a standalone device. A device that stands alone doesn't require any outside software, doesn't ever have to be hooked up to a computer. That's the Kindle, that's the iPad. Syncing devices are like the Sony. It has to go through a computer to get anything on it. The Nook is kind of a hybrid. You can do it by syncing if you want to use library materials or other materials, or you can buy it from the Barnes & Noble store directly on the device. You'll also hear a lot of talk about Wi-Fi versus 3G. That's how they connect to their individual network. The basic difference being Wi-Fi, anywhere you have wireless internet hotspot you can get on. 3G works more like your cell phone. So it connects from more locations, but not all locations. Alright, let's start with the Kindle. So the good points. This is the simplest one if you're a novice user. If you don't know a whole lot about e-readers, if this is a brand new technology, if you're nervous about e-reader technology, this might be a good place to start. It's pretty much foolproof. There's not a whole lot to it. This is a unit that's designed to be an e-reader, and it does that very well. It doesn't do much else, but as an e-reader, it's a good unit. The other advantage of this, it's about the cheapest one, and it's probably the only one that you can count on getting cheaper. The reason being, as we move into the negatives, Amazon is 100% in control of the content. So what that means is you buy this e-reader, the Kindle, you can only buy books from Amazon. So the unit might get cheaper, but that's because they're counting on making the money back on books. The other downside of this is you buy something, it doesn't belong to you. There's a case about a year ago, they sold a version of 1984 that they did not have the license for, so a lot of people who downloaded that version woke up the next day, it was wiped off their reader. So you have no control over your content. Amazon is 100% in control. The other thing to think about, this unit is designed for the individual book buying user. This isn't to work with a library, this isn't the best choice for a book club if they all want to use the same kind of book. This is for you and you alone. So if you're cool with that, this is not a bad unit. Alright, next we've got the Nook. This is the product from Barnes & Noble. So this is the Nook Color, which they came out with right before Christmas. The thing is, Amazon spent a lot of time doing this e-ink technology, thinking that people wouldn't want to read on just a normal computer-style screen. Barnes & Noble took a chance. They made a color touchscreen, so it's not e-ink. And it turns out people are interested in the color screen and the touch screen. It makes the user interface really easy because it's like using an iPad or a similar device. The good things about this, you can get a lot of different content on this because it supports EPUB, which is the kind of thing you get from Overdrive or a lot of online sellers, Google Books, that kind of stuff. And in addition, you can download from the Barnes & Noble store. Another good thing, they created this with a lot of in-store options in mind. So when you take your Nook into the Barnes & Noble store, you can do a lot of browsing, and you can actually, anything that's on the Nook store, you can look at on your Nook and preview for an hour for free. So they've kind of incorporated some bookstore elements into their e-reader. The other thing is, based on what we've seen online from some Nooks that people have hacked, it does have a lot more capability than it's demonstrating right now. So apps, upgrades, that kind of thing are a high possibility in the future. It's got a lot more power than it's using up right now. The bad. Barnes & Noble, though they're working with libraries a lot better than Amazon is today, there's no guarantee of that tomorrow. There's nothing forcing them to stick with us. There's no contract or that kind of thing. The other thing is, as we've seen with the Greeley Borders, this is tied to a physical bookstore. So it would still have some usability if Barnes & Noble were to fold. However, what you'd miss out on is a lot of those good opportunities like troubleshooting this in the store, which is available, the advancements, the apps, that kind of thing. You probably wouldn't see a whole lot of updates if Barnes & Noble were to go under. Also, to get other materials like from Google Books and Overdrive, you do have to sync up with a computer. They haven't made it work where you can do it straight onto this device yet. So that's kind of a hassle too, especially if you're not a power user. So this is a little more open than the Kindle. It's a good option too if you're someone who's going to share books with other people and that kind of thing too. Alright, next we've got the Sony. You'll see this one is an e-ink too. It's a black and white. Click this on real quick. And that's what the display looks like. It's got a hybrid touchscreen and some buttons as well. So the good thing about this is very customizable, very open to different formats. You can even read Microsoft Word documents and that kind of thing on here. You are also in control of the content. This is the least controlled by some outside entity. Sony is not super interested at this time in controlling what you put on here or what you do with it. They sell it to you, it's a device, do what you want with it. The other thing is power users are going to like this device. They're going to have the most options. If you're really comfortable with technology and you're not worried about messing it up, this might be a good choice for you. The bad news, the uploading and syncing is done mostly through a computer. They have a newer edition that can stand alone, but for the most part, if you choose Sony, you're going to be using a computer, so keep that in mind. It's also the most challenging for amateur users. It's got a lot of options, but that means for amateur users, it's got a lot of options that you can mess up. So that's something to think about too. The other thing is, there's not a whole lot of tech support with this one. So if you get stuck, you're going to be in trouble because I don't know what you're going to call, 1-800-SONY or something like that. So power users might want to think about the Sony. And if you're really into the reading experience, the black and white, that kind of thing, this isn't a bad idea. Alright, finally, iPad. So you're probably somewhat familiar with the iPad. The thing to keep in mind, the iPad is not an e-reader, it's a tablet PC. So it's going to have a lot more options. Most of the advantages of the iPad are that you can do just about anything on here. So if you're browsing, creating documents, music, photos, whatever, the iPad is going to be your tool of choice. It's more of a Swiss Army knife rather as a specific use tool. The other big advantage of the iPad is that the interface is really intuitive. They've done a lot of studies where they kind of throw an iPad at a young kid and they pick it up pretty fast. Plus, you can download a version of Overdrive straight onto the iPad, get your book straight onto the iPad. You don't have to mess around syncing it up with another device. The bad. Again, Apple owns this device. You buy it, you buy the hardware, but if they catch you messing around with it, they turn it into just a piece of plastic and metal. It's worthless to you. The other thing is, this costs a lot more. This is twice as much as the next closest e-reader because it's a tablet PC. So you can do a lot more, but if you already have a laptop or if you're already using a MacBook, you have to ask, do I need a MacBook and an iPad, or do I just want an e-reader? That's pretty much it. As far as e-readers go, there are a lot of different options. They're all really good options. I'd say think about what kind of user you are. Are you a power user? Are you someone who just wants the e-reader and wants it as simple as possible? Or are you looking for a little bit of everything? Make your choice and go from there. Alright, so quick recap just because I know I'm talking to library folks out there. Amazon, to review. There will be no library books on Amazon. This is on purpose. This is their decision, not ours. And it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime in the future. Like I mentioned, the unit's a little bit cheaper, but that's because they want you to buy their books. So they can't make that money back if you're using library books. Nook. You can do library books on here. It's a little tougher. You have to sync up, you have to use Overdrive, and you have to go through Adobe Digital Editions, but it's possible. And once you do one, it's not too hard after that. Sony, similar to the Nook, a little bit easier, again, because it's just a little bit less restricted and it has a little bit less built in. iPad, Of these, probably the easiest to use with library books once you get it set up. The reason being, you can get Overdrive straight on here, you can download the book straight on here, you don't have to fool around hooking it up to a computer or anything like that. This is ready to go.